There is always this inner dialogue running in our minds, an inner conversation that shapes our very life experience. It shapes our beliefs and how we behave in the world. We often discount the power of this mental voice, but the implications of it are far more profound than we realize. It's our inner guide, this voice, a companion that never leaves us. It can either be our ally or it can be our adversary, and it defines how we feel about ourselves and our perception of our world. It is also the one that moderates our decisions in life, and sometimes this voice cheers us on, and other times it may be the voice of condemnation, a critic, a judge. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time, I'm Jess, and you are watching Living Free, where we discuss the things that can get us stuck in life, as well as strategies and inspiration to overcome them. If you support this work, please consider subscribing and give me a thumbs up. As we go about life, all we have is our body and our mental faculties, and this includes our intuition and our mental resilience. Today, I want to explore the inner dialogue that happens in the secret places of our minds and the powerful impact that they have on our mental state and our behaviors. So let's explore how these words create or they destroy a sense of well-being and freedom. If the inner voice within us is negative and it's critical, we often find ourselves believing it. This can take us down all sorts of destructive paths filled with addiction and confusion, uncertainty, and this constant pervasive need to escape. But this voice is just thinking. It's simply the languaging of our thoughts. Most of us automatically believe them. We don't ever question the mind. The instant we believe a thought, it manifests as our life experience from the inside out. But we can change the course when we recognize what it is that we're actually doing. This usually happens when we have come to the end of our rope and we start to see reality for what it is. The good news is that there is a way to transform that inner thinking voice that runs on autopilot mode, the programmed mind. We can develop a sound mind that empowers and strengthens us in reality here and now. When we decide it's happiness or bust, we immediately learn the requirement of self-compassion. We are on this path to knowing that we can take conscious control over that voice and the conditioned thinking mind. I've heard it said, the mind is a wonderful servant, but it's a terrible master. The mind is simply an instrument of our consciousness, something to be used, not be mastered by. And changing the nature of thoughts involves intentionality and consistency. Just like when we train a muscle group at the gym, nothing is going to change if we remain passive to the old conditioned thinking mind. Words and thoughts captivate our attention, and when we are caught by them, they create all sorts of sensations in the body. We can physically feel fear and anxiety, and those feelings in turn generate more corresponding thoughts. And we do this passively by habit. It's like a feedback loop that keeps us feeling bad, or sometimes it can keep us feeling stable in other situations. And we can see that words can either be a poison or they can be a cure. They cause pain or they can heal. And if somebody has spoken poisonous words to us, we might replay those words throughout our lives. We make unconscious agreements with them when we believe and repeat them internally, and they become deeply ingrained in our psyche. This is how a lot of us develop a fixed mindset. We believed the words and came to define ourselves by them in a bond of agreement. Now, depending on how we are hooked up psychologically, some of us are more susceptible to letting those poisonous narratives take root. Our mind is like fertile soil for the seeds to grow, and they take root deep within us. And if the seeds are poisonous, well, that is what is taking root in us. A lot of this is determined in our childhood when the soil of the mind is extremely fertile and it just takes in every planted seed. And as these seeds grow and they take root, our personality develops and is a blend of all the planted seeds. Poisonous words are the toxic seeds that have been planted. They are spread when people spread their personal pain to others. These people hurt inside, and they either consciously or unconsciously want others to hurt as well. Maybe it's a way to validate the pain and make people participate in their pain with them. The human psyche is so complex, and why we do this, who knows, but we can see that this is happening all around us, all around the world. And it comes from our base nature, our lower nature. We act in ignorance, and we don't understand the impact of our words when we express express our pain through them. This is not to give people an excuse for their bad behavior. It's just how it is. When poisonous words land on a person who's particularly susceptible or conditioned with the fertile ground for those kind of seeds, they settle in and they take root. And some people have different levels of resilience, so those toxic seeds might just bounce off, or they're just going to grow really shallow roots, that have little lasting effect on that person just because they have developed more resilience. We can see how most humans are negligent with their words, not realizing the powerful impact, and they're just throwing their pain all around, not caring where the seeds land. How are the words you say to yourself any different? We self-poison ourselves in this way all the time. These seeds take root in us through belief. We unconsciously agree with them, and we grow up believing that we're inadequate, stupid, not talented, we're just not able to be happy. We label ourselves as failures, as victims, as worthless. We believe that life is supposed to be about struggle. If that is the agreement within ourselves, well, then our life reflects it. In the classic book, The Four Agreements, right here, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about being impeccable with your word. This means that we understand the power of our words. Power always requires responsibility. And when we use our words irresponsibly, we harm ourselves and others. He likens it to casting black magic spells. We do this on those we love and care about, as well as ourselves. The age of social media has given us a whole new way to spread our poison. Because we are lost in our inner pain, we just spew our poison on anyone who happens to be in our field of contact, and also, in the process, continue to contaminate ourselves. But we can break the spell when we develop a new agreement about ourselves. Then we will open up the door for a changed outlook on life. But we must take responsibility. Nobody is coming to rescue us from ourselves. We are endowed with this inherent power, but we must believe it for it to be revealed. You could think of your words as the carriers of energy. The quality of the words determines if we turn them into positive or negative energy, helpful or harmful, truth or untruth. Being mindful of and impeccable with your word means you are using your power wisely. But first, we must be in touch with what is actually happening inside. Are we in pain? Have we been affected by the words of others? Now, what about the words that we repeat to ourselves? Through belief, these words have cemented into agreements defining us. We have to realize that those words, or poisonous seeds, were sown in our own fertile soil, but they were probably cast out by somebody else in our lives who was also affected by the poison of others. It usually happens in ignorance and is merely the unconscious spreading of pain from one person to another. We have all participated in this cycle to some degree. The people expressing their pain towards you likely never intended to alter the course of your life, but they did. It's all because we have been slaves to our own minds. We didn't know any better. Understanding this has helped me to stop blaming and forgive people from my past, as well as forgive myself for the poison that I spread to others. The change begins inside, and the first step is to realize the impact of words and their power. Become aware of the personal agreements you have made within yourself along the way. Are they true? Are those agreements keeping you in a fixed mindset? Do you believe that you are capable of learning a new way of being? And if the answer is no, well, I call BS. That is the fixed mindset and the old agreements talking. Excuses come from a fixed mindset, so that keeps us from even trying. Even if happiness and freedom are your secret dreams, we fool ourselves into thinking that we can't have them. Desire must be genuine for the work to begin. And until we reach the point of surrender, the end of our rope, we're going to stay in our little box of misery, peering out, wishing things were different, blaming and projecting, and just remaining stuck. Carol Dweck wrote the best book about mindset. I've mentioned this before in a previous video. In her book, she describes the person with a fixed mindset and the person with a growth mindset. The latter is the fixed mindset. The growth-minded person might not be naturally gifted, and even if they are, they still understand that hard work is necessary, that failure is not the end. Failure is not failure, but rather a chance to learn and improve. It's really an entirely different way to look at things. Like many people, I've had a fixed mindset for most of my life, but I have learned that ego plays a massive part in that. The ego is perfectionism. It fears failure and what people think about it. My ego would rather not even try. Ego is afraid to put forth extraordinary effort because it believes that we're just not gifted in this area of being happy and free. Ego thinks that if it is gifted in that area, that we wouldn't have to try to work hard or work at things over time. If you ask somebody who appears to be gifted, they will confirm that, they had to do a lot of work. And what I'm getting at here is that we have a lot of mental conditioning to overcome, but it only happens when we are able to uncover an unwavering resolve. Decide to make new agreements within yourself. Realize that everything requires hard work and practice. Failure is just not the end of it all. It is a chance to learn and to change your strategy. Failure isn't failure. It's simply feedback. Anything worth having will require effort and work on your part. And a life of freedom is worth it. Freedom from the prison you created in your own mind by believing thoughts that became false agreements. When you notice that defeating negative thought in the form of an inner voice, simply don't engage it. Instead, you consciously change its polarity. You turn it around. Be kind and compassionate and positive with your words. Like when you're helping a good friend, get through some hard stuff. What do you say to your friend? This habit in us needs to be cultivated and nurtured until it becomes more natural. We are planting new seeds here. Develop a mindset that doesn't always identify with your emotions and feelings. The mindset that doesn't identify as a body or a brain. I like to think of it as being oriented from the higher mind, the mind of the spirit, the very ground of being, the one connected to source energy or God, the infinite, the true you that exists before you ever developed an ego, before you developed a personality, an identity, or your inner narrative, before all the agreements were made within you, before all the spells were cast and the seeds were sown, the consciousness that you actually are. You can deny what you will, but if you are here, you are a conscious-filled being. Connect with that, the closer than close presence of your own beingness. Make new agreements with yourself while oriented from the higher mind. Speak truth to yourself from the silent depths. People with fixed mindsets believe the untruthful words in their heads. They ruminate over these thoughts that involve shortcomings and problems and inadequacies. They torture themselves to no end. All they believe in is unworthiness. They are self-measured by their perceived failures and inadequacies. They remain in this constant state of not good enough. They identify as failure itself. They think they live in the space between their ears and they never really feel here. There's always a sense of being somewhere out there, disconnected. And just to emphasize this more, the ego is a massive part of the fixed mindset. It wants to be effortlessly perfect. And because that's simply impossible, it usually doesn't even try. It's very image oriented. It's obsessed over the image that it projects of itself. And since perfection is an unattainable ideal, any attempt is just kind of made in vain. It's done in vain because ego is in the way. We can know when the ego is interfering because there's always going to be this sense of struggle. Struggle will be front and center. Understand that, ego is just a psychological phenomenon, and nothing can be done if we are oriented from the standpoint of the ego. It is really empty and it's just incapable, and it really only exists in the mental agreements. People with growth mindsets don't define themselves by the problem or as the problem. They take a more objective view of the situation and themselves, and this helps them to develop more creative solutions, new strategies, and just a genuine and honest approach. Change power comes from a deeper place, a deep place of reality and substance. It comes from the silent ground of our very existence. In closing, we've talked about the inner voice, we've talked about the languaging of our inner thoughts about ourselves, and how noticing them and the effects they've had on our lives can be helpful. We talked about how we make agreements with ourselves by believing these negative thought patterns and how we poison ourselves and basically every aspect of our lives. We discussed how we inherently have the power to change ourselves if we decide to. We have to choose to live and be free, and the strength is going to come when we make that firm decision, and then we're going to see our resolve increase. I hope you found some value in this video. Please subscribe if you want to support this work, and show me some love with a like. Please join the conversation by commenting below, and please remember to keep things kind and respectful to others. Once again, I thank you for being here with me today, and I will see you next time.